Hey, it's Sol, and I'm going to do what I hope to be is a short review, a spoiler-filled review, by the way, of the Before the Storm book written by Christie Golden. I finished reading it just a little while ago. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep since, but I'm going to try to get right to it, okay? So here we go. Before the Storm is a tie-in before the Battle for Azeroth expansion, the bridge, you could say, between 7.35 and 8 point whatever the heck. It's a story of the Horde and Alliance, of its leaders, Anduin and Sylvanas, who had just bounced into this new role for only a very short time so far, and we start to really see them come into their roles despite the experiences that they might have had previously. And it's a story of normal humans. Okay, normal humans as in the humans of Stormwind and Lordaeron, and the former humans, the Forsaken. We see all this smashed together in a web of nuance, of different perspectives, and I think that Christie Golden did a really good job of building these characters, some of them temporarily, in order to create this final climactic event that really underlines the tone of just what it is that separates the Horde from the Alliance. So like I said, there are a number of arcs, including the Horde and Alliance arc, when everything comes together, like that big gathering that you might have heard of already, as well as a goblin slash gnome kind of arc. I thought that it was pretty entertaining. This entire arc is kind of cut between different segments, and it's spread throughout the entire book, although there's not a whole lot of coverage of this. But this goes over Azeroth as well as these two characters, a former husband and wife, who do research and they try to discover the different properties of Azeroth, what it does, what it can be used for, and ultimately they're being forced into a role that they don't want to be in, and at least from the looks of it, they're killed for it. Funny enough, I find this to be the most lighthearted and probably the happiest part of this book, because this whole book is it's extremely sad. It's full of tragedy. No one comes out happy, but I say that between these two Azeroth researchers, they come out a little bit happier than some, even if they're now dead. Like dead, not Forsaken dead, just dead. I think the character writing, it was pretty much right on the money. Sylvanas has been consistently defined by the actions that we see, but the book gives us a chance to look a little bit, it gives us a chance to pull the curtain a little bit, and we get inside her head as to what she's thinking. We get a very clear view that she cares very, very much about her people, to the point where, as an undead, she's willing to cut off parts of herself, or otherwise cut off parts of the organization itself, in order to save the greater whole. Of course, those of you at home and on the toilet that might have seen these many previews, and to be perfectly honest, the previews pretty much cover all the major points of the book, aside from a few details. Sylvanas can be painted as undoubtedly evil. Personally, I think it's a bit more accurate to say that she is unreasonable, as opposed to being evil, but well, I'll just leave it at that. Anduin is being painted as a boy who is coming of age, like, again. He's, I believe, 19 years old at this point in the book. He's not a boy, but he is king, and with that comes huge responsibilities, and we get to see him feel a little bit overwhelmed from this new role, comparing himself to his father many times throughout the book. I find that he's greatly influenced by the things that happen very closely around him. These influence the decisions that he makes. And in fact, it is the death of his former friend, or of his friend slash servant Will, that kind of kicks off the idea of family and trying to bring the Horde and Alliance together by using this whole gathering event. One part that I thought could have been written in is just reasoning why this gathering couldn't have been done in a more neutral area. I get that that Arathi Highlands is a relatively empty spot that borders between Horde and Alliance territories, but why not another more neutral place, such as the Vindikar or the Netherlight Temple, which is where a lot of the story also takes place, or even Light's Hope Chapel, the Paladin Order Hall. That would have been a great place for people to gather that where nothing bad could happen because you're surrounded by a bunch of, big burly light-based people. There are other characters that we know of, but they're only lightly mentioned in this book. Like, we only get like a little bit of Mechatork, a little bit of Malfurion and Tyrande, but we see a little bit more of Greymane, Turalyon, as well as Velen. These three, for the most part, act as Anduin's advisors through the events of this book. They give a pretty good perspective when it comes to Anduin bouncing ideas off of him, or if they outright oppose one of his ideas, and in this case, they were pretty adamantly against this idea of this gathering. And then there's the introduction of Calia Menethil. And when I say introduction, I mean that, remember, there aren't a whole lot of people in WoW that have played the Priest campaign, so there are a lot of people that might not have known that Calia Menethil existed at all until this moment. And I think that's very important to understand for readers. So we know she's back, even though apparently no one outside of the Netherlight Temple knew this, and we only see so much development from her because we're trying to play catch up with this one. I admit that by the book's end, I see Calia as a dummy, as a not very smart person, because a lot of the tragic events that had happened in this book are her fault. In the end, she's killed on the field, so publicly we get to see the death of Calia Menethil, even though later on she gets taken to the Netherlight Temple. She's raised as this funky, white-eyed, Forsaken, undead-like-ish, not really person. It opens the door for future story, but it leaves the character herself a little bit empty. Regarding Calia, I don't know if Talia Fordragon is actually her daughter. The way the story depicts itself, Calia had already found a guy, fell in love, and this is like a nobody, just a footman by the way, and had a kid. Then Arthas happened. Calia meets up with her husband and daughter in South Shore, but then they're again separated. So Talia really is the daughter of Calia and Bolvar Fordragon. Bolvar was a footman, then became a paladin, then became like a regent lord between the time of Wrath of the Lich King and the start of the World of Warcraft. And that seems a little bit less probable, for me at least. If they want to write that in, cool, but that's just my take on it right now. What I think is the true star of this book aren't these major characters, but just the regular people that we're introduced to throughout this book. What the writer had to do was create a number of stories and get readers interested in who they are, what they did, and get us to like them just enough to feel bad when they're ultimately killed. Regarding the Forsaken, the ones that we read about are part of what's called the Desolate Council. It's a group of 22 Forsaken who are just kind of keeping the seat warm for Sylvanas while she's away doing her thing. As I said, we'll see a buildup of their characters to get us, the reader, invested into cheering these characters on as they finally meet up with their human counterparts in this gathering in Arathi Highlands, and following that, the tragedy when almost all of them are killed. Despite the conclusions that you may have regarding Sylvanas, I think that at least she's convinced herself that she has the best intentions in mind. I think one of my favorite scenes that comes to mind is the moment before this gathering starts, when Anduin and Sylvanas meet on the field. They exchange a few words. Okay, well, Sylvanas exchanges some shade, but Anduin retorts and he's just like straight up, hey, did you betray my father? I was like, ooh, drama? I think I just like that the book confronted the question that so many fans and critics have been asking, like, whose fault is the Broken Shore? And I really liked the answer that Sylvanas gave. I'll read it. She said, Varian Rin's destiny was set in stone, little lion. The Legion's numbers would have seen to that whatever choice I made that day. It goes on. His blue eyes searched hers for the lie. He found none. Something about him relaxed ever so slightly. Anduin asked Sylvanas a question that took her pretty much a full page for her to eventually get to the answer. And I love that because it brought us all the way back to the very beginning of Legion, the very thing that kicked off this great animosity that's been brewing between the Horde and Alliance since. Even when the fate of the world was in danger and still is. If I had a least favorite moment in this book, it would probably be the end of it. The reason is because Anduin gets the last word, and what I mean by that is that it gives the reader the impression that with Anduin's, like the last couple of pages are all about an Anduin perspective. Heck, most of this book is an Anduin perspective, but it's the end of it that kind of bites at me a little bit. By giving Anduin, or giving the Alliance effectively what's the last word, it sets the tone and, in a way, it judges Sylvanas and the Horde. For context, I'll just explain to you folks, the last time we see Sylvanas say or do anything is back at Arathi Highlands when she finally leaves Anduin alive after Calia is killed. That's it. The aftermath, the Netherlight Temple, the epilogue, it's all from Anduin's perspective. I would have loved to see just a little bit more retrospective in part of Sylvanas and or the Horde at the very end of the book. Like, I mean, even something like, oh, so what's the whole Azeroth situation right now? Just a little bit of something to provide not exactly evenness, but just additional context to make it look like what Sylvanas did is not the last thing that she's done up until the next thing that we see her do. I guess all I'm trying to say is that I want more story, okay? Is that so much to ask? So that's going to be it for me. I know this was more like, I don't know, like a recap than a review, or a review or a recap. I don't know. This was just me like talking for however long this is. I hope you liked this video, so, hit the like and all that stuff. But more importantly, if you're interested in getting the book, hey, go ahead and pick it up. This was a really, really good read, and it's not just about Horde and Alliance, but it's about the people, the citizens that are more or less victims of everything that these leaders and us, the champions of Azeroth, all the things that we do. Please subscribe to the channel to show your support, or consider becoming a patron so I can give you more of this and all things Warcraft. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.